Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 meeting of the Shrewsbury Select Board. I'm Beth Cassavant, and I'm the chair, and we'll just take a moment to go around and introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Teresa Flynn.
Michelle Conlon.
John Samia.
Carlos Garcia.
Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
Justin Dobson, Assistant to Town Manager.
Okay, the first item on our agenda this evening is to approve bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The second item is to review and act to approve the minutes of the April 9th, 2024 meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3 is announcements and reports. Are there any announcements and reports this evening from board members? Okay. Item number 4 is the town manager's report. Mr. Mizikar.
I have a couple things this evening. A couple updates for the board. First, just wanted to let everyone know that we've received a building permit request at 1000 Boston Turnpike, which is the Christmas Tree Shops Plaza. This is for the conversion of 40,000 square feet there that was the appliance store into what looks like a trampoline business. So a good entertainment venue coming to town there, and we're all interested in seeing that plaza developed and getting back to good commercial use. So that's good news there. That's such a quick turnaround. Then a couple updates on the Route 20 corridor. We had a meeting yesterday with Mass DOT, and I'm happy to provide some updates. So with regards to the major reconstruction and safety improvements that will occur between South Street and Green Street to Valenti Drive, there's a revised cost estimate of $30 million for that project, and it is funded. It remains on schedule to be put out to bid in the first quarter of 2026. I do want to note that there's a 25% design public hearing on May 23rd, 2024, so we all have incentive to have town meeting over so we can talk about the Route 20 corridor on that Thursday night. Just two other updates with regards to Route 20. The state informed us yesterday that they have secured $10 million for the Route 20 and Grafton Street improvements at that lighted intersection by Flynn's truck stop and that whole interchange with 140. That's scheduled to be put out to bid in early of 2025, so it's on pace ahead of the other major improvements at the Route 20 corridor. And then finally, we did submit yesterday with a statement of intent and interest for the Community One-Stop Grant Application Program for the design of the Green Street South Street Connector Road. This project has a preliminary total cost estimate of around $5 million for construction, and this grant application was for $500,000 to begin the design work for that. So that is a program that does fall under the scrutiny if we were not under MBTA compliance. So that would be a project that we wouldn't be eligible for if that zoning or if that zoning's not been put in place. So we will keep the board abreast of all these continued improvements and the grant process as well.
Thank you. Item number 5 is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31 to offer the citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during Select Board meetings on matters within the board's authority. This evening, we have a request from Ben Smith of 4 Newton Street regarding the future direction of the town of Shrewsbury. So if Mr. Smith is here, I would invite him forward to share his comments. All right.
Is this being closed captioned? I can't see.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's on.
No. All right.
I think he's.
No.
No.
You say?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to meetings and hearings. Item number 6 is a meeting with the school committee to review the financial forecast pursuant to the May 2021 override framework. So we'll just take a moment for the school committee and Dr. Sawyer and Mr. Girardi to get comfortable at the table. Right. And welcome. Glad to have everyone here. If you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to introduce yourselves for folks at home.
Rachel Shrewsbury.
John Linsky.
Sandy Fritz.
Joe Sawyer, Superintendent of Schools.
Chris Girardi, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations.
Erin Boucher.
Okay, wonderful. And thank you so much for being here. So this meeting is, although we love to have the school committee join us at our select board meetings, it is part of our override agreement with the community that we will hold at least 2 joint public meetings annually to better inform each other of our ongoing work. And I think it's really important that the residents understand that this relationship between the select board and the school committee extends beyond these required meetings, right? We have a very collaborative and open relationship. Just over this past year, we've had 3 workshops on budget and capital planning, and there's ongoing 2 meetings to keep communication going throughout the year. And those meetings have 2 members of the select board. Currently, it's Mr. Samia and Ms. Flynn, and then 2 members of the school committee, currently Ms. Fritz and Ms. Heffernan, and then our town manager sits in on those, superintendent, and then Mr. Girardi in his role for finances. So again, lots of work gets done throughout the year. What we see tonight on TV is really only the tip of the iceberg. And all of that is to make sure that we're able to provide the best services to the community, and that we're always being mindful of the costs associated with those services, and that we're staying true to the agreement that we made to the community with the 2021 override. So we're here tonight a little bit to celebrate some successes, right? We built consensus in our workshops around extending the duration of the override while maintaining desired operating conditions for both municipal and schools. There was a dynamic forecasting tool that was developed by Mr. Snowden and Mr. Mizikar that was used to help fine-tune our fiscal projections. And I think that that was really helpful in understanding, what a tweak on quarter of a percentage point would do to each budget, and then what does that mean for our out years. We got creative with the use of ARPA funds to remove some one-time expenses around textbooks from the school budget. It was about $310,000. And so what that does is it reduces the percent of increase, and that's something that we're going to talk about this evening, from 4.50% to 4.13% while maintaining service levels. And by doing that, the bottom number is reduced, and that's the number that's used to move forward into the following year, and so that helps us to extend the duration of the override. So that's just an example of the collaboration between, our board and your committee. So the model, we all know, it's built on the need for subsequent overrides. We are pretty open about that in our meetings, and I know in your meetings as well. And we always want to make sure that we're having those conversations with the community about what it means to invest in our services, and what are we willing to do to make sure that we are able to continue to provide the types of services that the residents expect, not only from our strategic plan, but from yours as well. So I do want to turn it over to the manager. He's going to talk a little bit about the numbers and kind of explain how we got there.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Of course, fiscal year 25 marks a milestone in this cycle through the first override, or through the 2021 override. This is the 4th year of the 4-year commitment that was made between the select board and the school committee to not seek additional funding through an override ballot question. And we're of course looking further into the future now with the diligence and maintaining the commitments that were made, and can see 2 additional years that are clear for this. override. So we've been really diligent, and I think one of the successes that have come from this is, although we've had additional revenues that have been buoyed by growth and state aid and local receipts that have been greater than we anticipated, we were diligent in putting those monies away for the future stabilization of the override in our operating expenses. So I think many cities and towns have fallen into a trap where if they would have had additional revenues, there's always a way to spend it, and it's really tough for us to make those decisions not to spend those dollars, but it really will benefit us, and we provided ourselves a good path forward with that. So that means that, no conversations or formal questions at this point would, seem to be necessary until the fall of 2026. So we've been able to maintain those commitments through the override, and it's really benefited us. Although our strategic investments have certainly been challenged by inflation and other necessary expenses that we've had to take on just to maintain budget levels. And in some ways, that's been even more challenging for the schools as they've faced challenges that Dr. Sawyer and the committee have well documented. So I'm really pleased where we are with the financial situation. We have more money in the override stabilization account than we thought we would at this time. We've only put funds in. We intend to put additional funds in at the May annual town meeting. And we're cognizant of what the out years are in managing that into the first year when we'll need an additional override so that cliff isn't something that we can't overcome. So. That's it. Thank you.
Very good. I'd like to just turn it over to our guests.
Great. Well, thank you for having us, and I think, when we talk about the collaboration and communication, it's so important because there is a lot that goes on, and we're lucky that we have this type of a, conversation between the two boards in a regular basis. So we're always on top of what's happening within the community, looking at the financial picture, and, looking at the 2021 override and Kevin's vision of moving us into that with a stabilization fund and using prudent use of all of those dollars at every turn from both the municipal and the school department has really given, especially for us, a stability as we move forward, which is not something that we would always have in the past as a school department. So we want to thank you for everything that you're doing with us and moving this forward and always looking to the future and how we can continue on that common goal of making sure that we're spending as well as we can taxpayers' dollars. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Girardi. He's going to walk you through something you've already seen, but maybe people at home have not, where we started with our budget and then where we finished and the percentage that we will be voting on tomorrow night.
All right, thank you. A couple of high-level slides here to assist us with our conversation tonight. Back in February, on February 7th, we presented our original budget, school department town appropriated budget of $86,825,520. That's an increase of 4.5% over our current FY24 budget. Since that time, we've had healthy conversations amongst the select board, the school committee, and tomorrow we'll be presenting to school committee our updated budget of $86,515,519, which is a 4.13% increase. And that really is due to the collaboration and the investment of the $310,000 provided through the American Rescue Plan Act, which helps offset that and keep the percentage increase at the 4.13 moving forward. The $86,515,000 budget, there are some adjustments to it, but there is one significant adjustment. It doesn't impact the bottom line number, but something that we wanted to make, make evident, and something that has changed pretty significantly since February is we received our total out-of-district tuition projection for fiscal year 25 in April, and since February, there is a difference of $1.234 million. This represents 9 new placements and 2 move-ins with placements, and then 1 change from a day program to a residential program. So in the last few months, there's been a significant adjustment with that total cost being $7.867 million, up from $6.632 million that we presented back in February. our total estimated circuit breaker funds available for FY '25. We had projected $6.882 million back in February. Since we submitted our disproportionality numbers, that number has gone up slightly, which is good for us, at just over $7 million, with a $180,000 difference. This represents all of our estimated circuit breaker funds for what is estimated to be carried forward from '24 to FY '25. So to begin addressing the difference of the $1.234 million, our planned use of circuit breaker funds to offset FY '25 costs initially was just over $4 million at $4,007,119, and we are our budget is showing a use of $5,041,347, a difference of just over $1 million. So additional $1.03 million in circuit breaker funds to address significant increase in tuition cost projections. We are increasing the funds being used in the school department town appropriated budget. We initially were $2.6 million. We're using an additional $200,000 of the appropriated budget towards offsetting that difference. So the total funds budgeted to pay out of district cost, which equals the top line item there, is $7,867,249. That's both the increase in planned circuit breaker and the increase in school department funds. To land next year, our estimated circuit breaker reserve balance, what we're looking to end FY '25 with. Initially in February, we're targeting 75% of the max carryover at $2.875 million. Currently, because of the funds needed to satisfy the difference, we're looking at just over $2 million, which is an estimate of 50.35% of the max allowable to carry forward at the end of June 2025. So some significant changes to our circuit breaker numbers. Again, this is the most volatile of the costs that we see over the course of the year. This is unfortunately a good example of how that can fluctuate pretty drastically in such a short period of time. We've maintained a healthy balance in this area to be prepared for something like this. We're still sitting in a fairly decent place at just over 50% at the end of next year, but again, it's not what we had budgeted, a few months back. So something that we thought it was important to bring to your attention. Again, it doesn't impact the bottom line budget number, but it does impact, a lot of how we're operating our programming, particularly in the out-of-district tuitions.
So maybe if I can just piggyback on that briefly, and I think the right word to use, and I think you've heard it before, is volatile. This is a volatile area of our budget. Depending on whether or not a student ends up in a crisis situation, and we believe that we can no longer provide for their needs within the district, or it's a student that we've been working with the family for some time, and ultimately when it comes to the annual IEP required meeting, determinations made by the team as part of the legal process that we follow, that we can no longer meet that student's needs within the district. Again, this change of over $1.2 million represents 12 different students. The tuitions range from, I think the lowest is a $50,000 a year projected tuition to as high as about $175,000 a year. I'm sorry, $131,000 a year. And as you can see, there's that one shift from a day placement that costs about $260,000 a year currently. That will cost approximately $390,000 next year. So it's a $130,000 roughly increase for that student's needs year over year. As Mr. Girardi mentioned, the reason why it's been so important to keep a strong balance in our circuit breaker reserve is to be able to address these pieces without affecting the operations of the school department. I would echo what Mr. Mizikar said earlier relative to having money and not falling into the trap to just spending it because you have it at that time, and looking ahead for what your needs might be if other costs arise. And we remain in a solid position. Mr. Girardi's predecessor, Mr. Collins, had laid out sort of a four-prong, from a superior, you're allowed to carry forward whatever you receive in circuit breaker one year on reimbursement and the reimbursements from your costs from the previous fiscal year, whatever you receive in one year, that's the maximum you can carry forward to the next fiscal year. So, 100% of carrying that forward, which is actually what we were able to do this year, made a difference. And then we made a decision for the fiscal year '24 budget to tap into that sum for some key needs that we had, and be at 75% is the target for the end of this year, which is, I think you call that maybe very good, and that 50% is what he would determine adequate. You start getting below that, and you start to play, because not only is this our reserve really for this type of expense in out-of-district special education, but it really is our reserve for anything that might come up that's unexpected, even if it's outside of special education, because we can utilize those funds to offset costs and fund something else if necessary. But the good news is we're still in a stable place. I think, as, again, Mr. Mizikar referenced, and you've probably seen in the news, there are several school districts across the Commonwealth, districts, communities that are very similar to us socioeconomically, some who are likely, you would say, are maybe better off socioeconomically, who are facing significant cut school budgets this coming fiscal year. Some communities that are going for overrides, similar to what we did in 2021, but are actually in situations where if they get the override, they're cutting this much, and if they don't get the override, they're cutting this much. They're really in some tough spots, and it's the structural deficit issue that this town, thankfully, to the leadership of the school committee and the select board in 2021, convinced the community to make that investment in the operational override, without which we would be in an extremely painful place right now. And in terms of the usage or the setting aside of funds in the circuit breaker reserve, we know that there are other communities across the state that at times have gone back during the fiscal year to a special town meeting to request more money from the town for unanticipated special education increases like the one that we're illustrating this evening. So the good news story is that we're in a stable position. This is not changing our budget plan. There's a couple of, when we present tomorrow evening and ask the school committee to vote on the recommended budget to town meeting, there's some small adjustments in the areas just based on updated projections that allow us to do that additional $200,000 out of appropriations towards tuitions, out-of-district tuitions. But it's essentially the same budget you saw presented to Finance Committee back a month plus ago. And it's there are several mandated needs we need to address with some additional investments in a few key areas. And the fact that we had this big shift very recently is not going to affect that. And so that's a good news story for our community. There's stability there, and there will remain stability. Again, it just goes to show why it's so important to keep adequate reserves in place so that you can cope with some of these volatile shifts in the budget.
And I think when we spoke last year and we were looking at the FY24 budget, the school committee had a very extensive conversation about how much we would keep in the circuit breaker, because there's an opportunity cost could be lost if you could use that money to pay for things during the current year. And I'm very glad now that we did keep that higher percentage, because this volatility of this area, you never know what could happen. And it is not changing the bottom line, but it has moved things within a very short amount of time at a very expensive cost. So it just goes, when we're looking at our percentage for circuit breaker, we're very mindful, and I don't see some of the higher needs issues that we're experiencing now going away anytime soon. So I think for us, that's a good area to be mindful of when we look at potential costs down the road, that we want to keep within the approved budget and not have to look for money elsewhere or cut something to pay for a mandate.
Any questions or comments from board members?
May I ask one
Sure.
question? Thank you very much. Maybe just if, I don't want to steal your thunder for tomorrow night, but 7.8 million in out-of-district tuition, I mean, that's a lot. Can you just clarify, maybe for people who are tuning in, how much of that is funded outside of our direct school budget? Meaning, does the state contribute anything to these costs to subsidize these amounts, or is this 100% coming out of our budget?
Sure, I can respond to that. I mean, in terms of the sort of two ways the state is funding, the overall Chapter 70 funding for the state, factors in that you're going to have a certain number of special education students. So the Chapter 70 funds that the town receives, that goes to the town's general fund, that makes up a substantial portion of the school department budget is their state funds, and some amount of that, by their formula, is earmarked for special education services. The major place, however, where the state's providing funding, and if you look at the table on the screen, all of those circuit breaker dollars are state-funded dollars. That's a state reimbursement. It's a somewhat complicated formula, but essentially, if the state looks at what an average per pupil cost would be based on not based on what people actually spend, but based on their Chapter 70 formula. This is what a student per pupil per year. And if there's a student whose actual costs are more than 4 times that amount, then the state will reimburse you 75 cents on every dollar above that threshold. That's why it's called circuit breaker. You kind of get to this point, that's the circuit breaker, and above that line, the state will reimburse you 75 cents for every dollar you spend above that line. Sometimes there's a small number of students who are providing services within the district who will cross that threshold by a bit based on a lot of services they're getting and support. But the vast majority of those state dollars come for students who are tuitioned out to specialized programs out of district at these per year tuition rates. And so, there's substantial state funding. I mean, in terms of the slightly more detailed breakdown, that number there that says in the second line down that will be available, that's 7 million of circuit breaker funds available. That's the combination of the 2.65 million of reserve that we plan to take forward from this year to next year, which represents about 75% of the maximum. It takes into account, when we presented our budget to the Finance Committee, we are anticipating that we are going to land this year $400,000 in the positive, and we can take those savings and essentially through the circuit breaker mechanism add that to that reserve as well. And then we estimate that based on this year's eligible costs, those costs above that threshold, that we will be receiving from the state next year just over $4 million in reimbursement costs for our costs this year. So it's always trailing by 1 year, and that's what's really important to keep in mind, because these increased costs that we're estimating now for next year, presuming the state keeps good on its commitment, which when economic times have turned sour, sometimes they haven't met their full commitment. But if they meet their full commitment to fund it, we should receive substantially more circuit breaker in FY26 to reimburse us on those FY25 costs. It's a critical state funding mechanism. It came into play probably about 2 decades ago, I think now, because that's when these kinds of extraordinary out-of-district costs started to come to the fore, as there were more students with more complex needs, as autism in particular increased in terms of occurrence within the population substantially. And so it's a substantial state investment, which is much needed. The state keeping that commitment is really key because local districts rely substantially on that funding mechanism. So the breakdown between next year, how we plan to pay for that, is that we expect that we'll be spending just over $5 million of those state reimbursement dollars and just over $2.8 million of our appropriated budget, which has some state funding with, kind of baked at about 30% of that is state funded dollars, I guess is one way to look at that.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Okay. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, but thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it. And we'll be watching tomorrow night to
Thank
your
you.
vote.
Thank you.
All right, item number 7 is a presentation by Robert Ryan. Krista Dupre is going to present. Yeah, you seem to be struggling there a little bit. So we'll just have you introduce yourself, Krista, and provide, you'll be presenting as the petitioner regarding Article 32 in the May 2024 annual town meeting.
I can help answer any questions. It's just, I get bad allergies.
Yeah, you sound like you're struggling. Okay.
Hi,
Hi.
Good evening.
Good
Sorry,
evening.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
All good. As an abutter of the zone that will be discussed in this item, and also to be consistent with when I was on the Finance Committee and recused myself the first time, I'll be recusing myself again. So.
Okay, go get a coffee or something. All right, so welcome. I know that you're all aware, but just for people who might be in the room or watching at home, right, this is a courtesy that the Select Board extends to people who submit petition articles, just as an opportunity to share what your article is. It's just one more chance for people to understand, what the petition article is and sort of just get some information out. So
Sure.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Krista Dupre.
Bob Ryan, Colonial Drive.
We've come forward for this warrant Article 32, asking town meeting members to rezone the listed parcels in the article from limited industrial to commercial business. We've learned information about this area that was rezoned to limited industrial and their permitted uses. We believe the current zoning is extremely concerning since this entire area is over the town's aquifer recharge area, which is considered Zone 2. This particular area had been commercial business for many years until it was rezoned on August 8th, 2020. There are permitted type businesses in the commercial business we believe offers much more added protection to the town's aquifer. As of note, back in 2003, the commercial business zoning bylaw was updated by removing the use of warehouse distribution. We believe this zoning change back in 2003 was a positive proactive zoning improvement to provide protection to residents and the environment due to the fact commercial business abuts different residential zoning areas in this particular area and other zoning areas of Shrewsbury. And remember, this parcel also falls within, or parcels does fall within the Aquifer Overlay District, which was updated March 19th, 2005, and originally adopted February 21st. I've seen two dates, both 1998 and 1988, depending upon which document I'm referencing. So I will definitely be looking for clarification of that. Just for the public's information, the Aquifer Overlay is intended to protect public health and safety and minimize contamination of shallow superficial aquifers and preserving and protecting existing and potential sources of drinking water supplies. There's way more detail, obviously, in the zoning bylaws, but I won't go into that tonight. The risk to the aquifer from limited industrial uses, since the land is in the Aquifer Overlay District, which is in the town's drinking water, and we are concerned about that. Just for reference, in the limited industrial, this is a very, very basic overview, is intended for use for research laboratories, office buildings, and light industries. For commercial business, it is intended to provide goods and services for transients or tourists and non-consumer goods and services. All of the definitions actually in the zoning bylaws. I won't necessarily go through all of them. The key takeaway and the differences of them with the current site plan approval, they will have certain approval process and other conditions because of the Aquifer Overlay District, but we believe the commercial tax base with commercial business will be a less risk to the aquifer recharge area, which is Zone 2, and there is some areas of Zone 1, which is the wellhead. We have to ask ourselves what would happen if the aquifer was contaminated from uses permitted in the limited industrial zoning. What would Shrewsbury do for their water? As far back as 2001 in the master plan, the Aquifer Overlay District actually was discussed in detail, many different items and topics. Anywhere from, they talked regarding open space and recreation, which was a reference in that plan. Through this process, consensus was reached on the 5 most important goals identified to help the town protect its valuable open space resources. These included acquire through appropriate means key open space parcels, plan and develop greenways in town, preserve and enhance town's recreational facilities, protect the town's potable drinking water sources, and protect surface water resources. In addition, there's other areas that were touched upon in the 01 master plan. Development has increased in town, so the effect of pollution on the town's water bodies. It also does go into detail of water threats, groundwater resources, water supply, existing protection for water resources, which may include the EPA, as well as MIPA, which is Mass EPA Wetlands Protection, and there was also discussion of the Aquifer Overlay District. So there's information from the O1 Master Plan. This demonstrates the aquifer and the protection to the watershed conservation environment were highlighted over 20 years ago, and that there needed to be future provisions to protect Shrewsbury's aquifer. In 2016, the master plan also did highlight different areas, including, it was also mentioned in the 2012, this was embedded into it, the open space and recreation plan of goals and objectives, protect the town's potable drinking water sources, protect more land area in the Lake Quinsic watershed to protect the surface and groundwater supplies. The public workshop notes also indicated, are there open space and natural resources that should be protected but are not? What is their significance? It was stated or written into the plan, Worcester sand and gravel, land for water conservation because it is over the aquifer, and passive recreation for forested areas nearby. Under land use, page 77, there were goals that also talked about guiding and redevelopment to that have the physical, environmental, and infrastructure capacity to absorb and reduce impacts. Review zoning bylaw to ensure each district is compatible with the character of the land. Review existing bylaws, revision, strengthen, protect natural resources. Where feasible, acquire lands that contribute to the quality and diversity of wild habitat, protect or the protection of town's drinking water supply. There are additional informations in those charts for action items and goals. But there was also in the appendix, which was dated from November 19th, 2013, areas to preserve, and it stated the aquifer recharge watershed area, Newton Pond, Mud Pond. So we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here as a town? With the master plans from 2001 and 2016, along with stating over and over again how to protect our natural resources, including but not limited to the town's drinking water. Lastly, we believe by rezoning to commercial business is more in line with Shrewsbury's climate action and resiliency plan. This zoning will play a part. In addition, also, there's the Shrewsbury Collective Action for Sustainable Future Preserving Vibrant Natural Resources, the Sustainable Transportation, Land Use, Smart Waste, and Water Management. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you for town staff who assisted me as well.
Yeah, I just
Appreciate your time.
let the public know that the town manager and his assistants and many in the government, the town clerk and all, planning board, have been very helpful and gave good pushback, and we had discussions. But the key point is they've been very helpful. You know, if anybody has any other citizens petitions, not that you want to see them, but town manager and the staff is very helpful.
Great. Glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. It's important for the public to know that.
I wanted the public to know that you guys aren't the bad guys, that, as you and I know, Ms. Chairman, there's certain people in town who think we have certain agendas, but we don't. So.
Right, no, I mean, this is obviously, a citizen's petition exists for a reason. This board or town staff is not, looking to stand in the way of citizens exercising their democratic rights. So, thank you for bringing forward a very respectful petition article and for keeping to the article this evening, and I appreciate that as well. And look forward to, hearing what town meeting has to say in a couple of weeks.
Do you guys have any questions or no, or?
Any questions?
No.
We've been following it, and we were,
I just
many of
know
us were at finance committee.
Everybody has
also.
questions for us, so
No, I mean, I think that, I know that I can speak for myself. I know that I've been following this closely.
Okay.
As, the article as well.
Okay.
So I think that my colleagues have as well.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Of course, thanks for coming in.
All right, thank you.
Good night. All right, we're going to move on to financial business, to get Mr. Garcia back, though. And item number 8 is to review the fiscal year 25 fiscal projection 2. So I will turn it over to the manager or to Mr. Snowden.
Yeah, as Dave gets settled in there, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation. Fiscal projection 1 is produced at the outset of the budget process, and then as things mature over time, we make revisions to the document, mindful of our commitments and for our expenditures. So Mr. Snowden will walk through the details of the changes that we're proposing to the board this evening, which we'll be recommending to the Finance Committee for the final budget on Thursday at their hearing.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, everyone. All right, Justin, if you could go to the next slide, please. Yep. We'll be looking at the revenues from fiscal projection 1 and 2. We will provide the updates from fiscal projection 1 and 2 in the operating budget, the municipal non-utility budget, the utility budget, and then the staffing levels. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a fiscal projection 2 revenue by category. We have the initial projection, which was $183,654.369. At this point in time, there has been an increase in total revenue of $2,184,505. There was an increase in utility revenue in the water and sewer departments through article closeouts. So typically every year we look at articles that we've had in past years, and if those projects have been completed, we then we'll close those out, and that funding returns back to the retained earnings of those utilities and then can be used for future appropriations. Free cash is up $78,000. Other available funds is up $1,584,394, most of which is directly related to the transferring of $1.3 million from the closed out Beal construction project that will be used at the article to adjust the funding for the cemetery project. And then lastly, there is an adjustment in our reduced levy category, which in most part is due to an increase in pilot payments from Selco to support the town in its IT costs as we move to our managed service agreement. Next slide, please. So now looking at the expenditures, as the school committee, Dr. Sawyer, Chris Jardy spoke about earlier, we have the updated educational expenses, which is down $310,000 within the general fund. However, that is offset through ARPA funding. There is municipal expenses that have gone up $310,000, which we'll detail later. Debt service through some updated schedules is up $7,456. The utility expenses have increased. As I had mentioned earlier, there was article closeouts. Most of that increased cost is actually moving the funding to our sewer stabilization account to prepare us for future needs. And then lastly is warrant articles, which has the single largest increase. We'll go over that a little bit later, but we're going to be putting more money into our general stabilization fund. Lastly, the capital improvement plan is down $1.497 million. That costs, the total project and all the items are still going to remain the same, but we've used ARPA funding to complete the project. And the offsets and charges is just updated expenditures. All right, move to the next slide. Excellent. So this is the functional areas in the departments. What we've listed here are the departments that actually have budgetary changes. So I'll go through some of these. So at the top, we have the assessors department, which is an increase of $40,701. This is for the FY25 reevaluation. This was initially going to be a separate warrant article, and we thought it made more sense to keep within the assessor's budget as opposed to a separate article. So it's now within the department. The planning and economic development. This is an increase of an FTE. The funding was offset from the Public Works Administration Department and through ARPA funds for a planning and economic coordinator position. The police department, that increase of $14,000 is for updated costs for subscriptions. Let's see, fire department, the $87,000 was identified in fiscal projection 1 as a separate warrant article for the ambulance services that the town will now begin, but now it's going to be retained within the fire department in their 09 account. Building inspector was a correction of a longevity cost for an employee. The Public Works Administration, DPW, this reduction of $54,999 was the half-year salary that remained for the Assistant DPW Director, which will now be pulled and used to offset the expenditures for the Planning and Economic Development Coordinator. Debt service is up $7,454. Operating support is up $184,254. This is most notably in the IT areas where we also have additional funding from Selco. And we've already discussed the educational changes. So if we look at the net of all these total expenditures, is a net of $8,038 in change, total change. Next slide, please. All right, so now, again, we'll go through the administration and finance, and again, there's a change of $40,705. I think there's some rounding concerns at the end there. No change in FTEs in this area, and the only allocation change is in the assessor's department. Next slide, please. All right, this is operating support. So you can see in the line item MIS support, that's our IT expenditures. The $184,000 is an updated costs, which are most significantly offset through the pilot from Selco. Next slide. Public safety, the increase as discussed before is a total of $102,000 split between police and fire. Police again for updated subscription costs, and then for fire for the ambulance services, which was initially budgeted as a separate warrant article. There is no change to the retirement plan at this point in time. And then this year within the DPW that is funded through the general fund, the only change is the reduction of the assistant DPW director position. It was a half a year FTE. All right, community development. You can see that the year is the addition of the $37,000 for the planning and economic position, and then the adjustment to the building inspector's office of $200. And then there is no adjustments to the departments within human services for fiscal projection 2. And then this is the debt service schedule. So this was just going through and making some accounting corrections to all of our debt service schedules. So there was an adjustment in the principal for the Oak Middle renovations. If you go to the next slide, Justin, please. And then there were some other adjustments to some of our sewer and water borrowings, where we were making sure to incorporate the administrative fees within this larger borrowing schedule. And if you go down, so that the net change was $7,456. Yep, you're good, Justin. You go to the next one. Perfect. Yep. All right. Now, if we go to the next slide, will be an overview of the utilities. There is no change for the solid waste utility and stormwater utility at this time. Sewer and water have some changes, and we'll go into each one of those individually next. Sewer is up $412,856. Water is actually down $48,500. Next slide, please. So looking here at the solid waste budget, the between fiscal projection 1 and 2, revenues projected are remaining the same, and expenditures are as well at this point in time. Moving to stormwater, we see the same situation. Our revenues and expenditures are projected to remain the same from fiscal projection 1 and 2. Now moving to sewer, I mentioned the article closeouts earlier. So these were previous warrant articles and projects that are either completed or no longer necessary, so we're going to request that they be closed out. And what we're going to be using, the vast majority of the funds here for the sewer article is for the sewer stabilization. There is another article that we use to fund that funds within the town warrant. All right, and then same thing for water. We're identifying water closeouts, $116,000. And then we were able to reduce the use of the water rate funds or funds from the water retained earnings by closing out the water articles. And then that is a very quick overview of the vast majority of the changes. In total, the net increase in expenditures and revenue is $2,184,505. And I'm happy to go into detail on anything else that is helpful.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Samia?
Thank you. Just one question back on probably the third slide, the capital improvement plan, and we're funding some of the CapEx through ARPA funds.
Correct, yep.
And we talked about this at the April 9th meeting, but can we talk about what that means for general stabilization and what the result is? Because that's important. We talked a lot
Yep.
tonight about planning and not using, and I think what got a lot of communities in trouble was using stimulus funds for recurring expenses, which in this case, an example of ARPA funds for a non-recurring expense that we otherwise would have to spend it on. But, so that was important for us, and whereas other communities did spend it on recurring. But what's the benefit now of being able to move the money that we would otherwise expend on these capital expenditures into the general stabilization fund? If you could talk about that.
Excellent question. So the select board has established a general stabilization policy that provides that 5% of the total annual operating budget for the municipal and school expenses should be held in a general stabilization. By making this adjustment and funding the rescue vehicle from the fire department with ARPA funds, we're able to use free cash to fund our general stabilization. And with interest at the end of the year, our revised balance will be just shy of 5%, or 7.6 million. It's very likely that we may be over that if interest continues as it has been lately. So our current balance is 5.5 million. We'd be adding another 2.1 million to that with this warrant article.
Thank you. And then the other benefits, maintain our AAA bond rating, so we're gonna have that additional principal per se, as well as Schedule A income with, say, interest on the stabilization amounts, right?
Excellent.
So there's a lot of benefits to this that should ripple through, not only in '25, but in years beyond, having that stabilization fund.
Absolutely. The town has been pretty steady in funding the stabilization fund over the past couple of years at around $500,000 to $750,000 a year. Our normal cost will be all that is necessary to maintain us at this 5% going forward. So it's very unlikely that we would have to be putting aside $700,000 or $1 million into the general stabilization fund going forward, but maybe $150,000 or $200,000. So therefore, there is additional revenue available for expenditures in future years.
Like with pension, once we
Exactly.
became
It's a good
fully
example.
funded,
Yep.
we're able to earmark those funds and other needs. Okay.
Yep.
No, I think it's just important, and we talked about it on the 9th, but to bring up that planning isn't by accident, and there's a thoughtful process with this to get to that 5% goal, but it's just important for long-term stability and vibrancy of a community. It's a lot of issues that communities face with structural issues that are just part of every community in the Commonwealth, but we're doing as much as we can to hedge against a lot of this throughout our financial planning. So thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? So with this fiscal projection 2, are we at 3 full-time employees, right? Because we had 2 from the police and now 2 halves, right? So it's 3 total in the budget?
It
Or am I
It
counting
netted
wrong?
out, so we eliminated one position and added one position.
Okay.
So it's still 2 additional FTEs,
Correct.
2.5 additional FTEs because of the town clerk's office.
So it's still 2.5.
Still
Yeah,
2.5. Yep.
I didn't bring that up clearly beforehand, but yeah, we maintain our staffing levels that we initially presented in fiscal projection 1.
I know that's always a question, right?
it's a good question.
Because we talk about space constraints at town hall. Are we too many staff? No, I mean, I think that 2.5 additional staff for a year, I think we're still really very lean in the way that we have staff for all that we accomplish to provide service to a community of 40,000 residents. And it's remarkable. And I think that it just goes to show that there's very careful planning done. And, we don't add staff just to add staff. We add staff when there's an identified need that we can support with data that we need to add staff. So I think this is really great work. Very minimal changes, which just goes to show that the work that you did for fiscal projection 1 was, obviously on target. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to new business, and we have 2 people here who have waited very patiently. Item number 9 is to review and act on the one-day beer and wine license application from Xander Garfunkel of We Cocktails for a jazz concert at 378 Main Street on May 3rd, 2024, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So I'm going to ask you to come on up to the table and just introduce yourselves, or whoever wants to come up. Moral support and person here.
Hi, so
Hi.
I'm Xander Garfinkel. I just recently, closer to the end of 23, of the year 23, came up with my business for bartending, We Cocktails, OUI. And it's basically like a private bartending service. So I do parties, banquets, events, and all that. I haven't really done much yet for events. This will be my second one. But I have been bartending for quite some time because I do it in like the restaurant business. So I have been doing that for a while now.
So the reason we have you come in when it's your first time applying for one of these licenses is because we just want to sort of meet you. And just the board likes to make sure that you understand the responsibility that comes with our granting this type of a license, and that we would like to hear a little bit about, who's going to be serving, are they tip certified, impressing upon you just how important it is that we don't overserve, we don't serve minors. As long as there's not an issue, the next time you apply for a one-day license, you wouldn't need to come back before the board.
Right.
But we're obviously putting a lot of trust in you and the people that you have working with you. If you do have people working with you?
No, so currently, no, it's just me. So it's my business and I would be working for myself. For if there ever is a time, that's something I would get into like later. But right now in the moment, I only try to do events and banquets and like little parties that I could physically work myself.
Okay. And then just the one thing we noted was that we do require liquor liability insurance at a higher level than what you currently had been carrying. Is
Yeah,
that
I
all cleared
actually
up?
reached out and fixed it.
All right.
And I am tip certified and have like all that as well.
Okay, that's great. Are there any questions from the board? All right. Okay.
Maybe one question. Do you pronounce it OUI?
It's we, like we.
It is
like
we. Okay, I wanted
yeah.
to make sure. I thought you said OUI.
So I said OUI
Going all
just so that
French
we
on
didn't think
you,
it's
okay.
just WE.
Okay.
Fortunately, Justin said it for me when we were reviewing the agenda, and I made a note to make sure that I said it correctly this evening.
Yes, but when you said OUI, I was like, wait a minute. So with that said, I will move that the board approve the one-day beer and wine license application from Xander
Yes,
Garfinkel
yes.
of We Cocktails for May 3rd, 2024, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Thank you. I'm also going to leave you guys business cards if you guys ever need
That'd be great. We're
services.
just going to vote, though, before you leave.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
no, I'm
leave
not
yet.
leaving.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then
Now we'll take your
now we'll take your card.
Good luck with your business.
Thank you so much. I
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
Yep, thanks for being here. All right, item number 10 is to review and act on the road closure request for a portion of Spring Street from Timothy Kelly of Peter Amarello Construction and Demolition for water and sewer connections on May 1st through May 3rd, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So this is sort of at the bottom of High Street, where High Street and Spring Street meet.
Yes.
And second. So as road commissioners, we need to authorize this closure. What's happening is there was a house there that was demolished, and they're gonna be building a new house, and they need to connect to the water and the sewer, and the connection is across the street. And so there isn't a way to make that connection without closing the road. And so we would need to grant this, this approval to temporarily close the road. And then, given the proximity to Spring Street School, there was concerns about drop-off in the morning and pickup in the afternoon. And so that's why the time was changed to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. But when you change the time, it requires them to have an extra day to do the work. So
So the motion's the first through the third?
The first.
it is now the
Okay.
first through the
Yeah, just
third.
'cause
So you might notice that
printed
there's
materials,
there's
so
a
that-
change.
Got it.
Yeah.
I just-
Um,
Okay.
So, and then noting for people who are listening. Oh, he's on the call.
Yes.
Perfect. How did I miss that?
That's fine.
All right.
Yes, how you doing? I'm Tim from Peter Amarillo.
Excellent. Thank you. So maybe you can do a better job of explaining this than I am.
I think you did a great job so far.
It's because I live in the neighborhood, so I see what's happening.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the water and sewer are located on the opposite side of the street, so, we would need to close the road, for a couple of days to do this project.
Okay. One of the things I'd asked about was the detour map and just making sure that we understand, what the detour looks like.
Yeah. Let me just pull it up here. So we would have police detail on both ends of the road closure. I guess probably the good thing about this is there's two roads that people can actually turn around in if they accidentally go up the road. But we would have signage down on the corner of Spring and Main Street. And probably about a quarter mile from High Street, right on Greenleaf Farm.
Okay.
Two details on both ends of the closure. And this wouldn't impact High Street at all.
Okay. So you could come at the end of High Street and take a right, but you couldn't go down, is what you're saying?
Correct, yeah.
Got it.
You couldn't go down Spring Street.
Understood. All right, any questions?
I just had a question. You just answered part of it with this not impacting High Street. There is a pretty significant curve there, and that will be, I'm assuming the police detail will be kind of strategically located to, prevent, any additional danger with that curve.
Yeah, so we would put the police detail at least 1,000 feet in front of that before the turn.
Okay.
So we could let residents who live along that way get access to their driveway. And he could stop anybody that's trying to go down that doesn't live down that street.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it was
He or
where
she.
the greenhouses are.
By
that curve
Marston,
there, yeah.
yes.
So, thank you.
I noticed the further action items are to notify police, fire, obviously waste management. Is there any notification that goes to residents in the area?
We can do that, yeah.
You can do a code red.
Yeah, by
Only
code
because
red.
there really is not an easy way. You have to really think about how you're gonna get to
Yeah.
Main Street
We
if
can
you're
do
not
that.
coming down Spring Street.
And we also proposed, we're gonna have signs the Monday before, ahead of time, so.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then I will take a motion.
Motion to approve the road closure request from Wednesday, May 1st through Friday, May 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, you're all set, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 11 is to review and act on the proclamation request from Taylor Galusha, Communications Coordinator, Town of Shrewsbury, and Valerie Clemmy, Communications Coordinator, Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations, Selco, for Arbor Day and the Arbor Day event.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 12 is to review and act to establish a municipal facilities optimization committee. And, let's see. All right, so, it's got a very fancy name, I know. The town is currently challenged by an overall space deficiency for departments operating from the town hall and South Street, and the Department of Public Works leadership and administration staff work from town hall, and operational staff primarily work from South Street. So what we are doing here is we are trying to sort of address the need that we identified when we talked about the capital improvements that were needed at South Street on the water and sewer building, and also on the DPW garage. We also know that we have space constraints in this building. And so we're looking to put together a building committee to think through the best way to address all of those needs. And the building committee would have 3 resident members, a member of the select board, and then the town manager or his designee. And I think that's it, right? That's all. Yeah, 5 members. So we are looking to put together this committee and have the committee recommend a preferred design concept and budget to our board no later than September 10th of 2024, because as we discussed, this is something we would like to have prepared for special town meeting, which we usually have in October, and then for a ballot in November to go before the voters for approval. Anything else you want to add?
That's it, just if necessary on the ballot.
If necessary, correct.
Right.
We may find a way not to need
Yep.
to do a debt exclusion.
Quick question. Is the expectation that this committee would be discharged upon that deliverable?
It would not, no, we would foresee them moving forward through the balance of the design work and construction administration.
Okay.
So this
Thank
is a
you.
great opportunity. I know that I have already had residents stop me and ask about when they could apply, so that's good to hear.
Interesting.
I know, well, it just means someone's reading our agendas when they get posted. All right,
All right, so
I'll take a motion.
motion to establish a municipal facilities optimization committee.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that brings us to item number 13, which is to review and act on the performance evaluation for the town manager. And this is where you get to sit there and be uncomfortable while we say great things about you. Or we berate you for not doing a good job. No, it's definitely not that. So bear with me because this is a whole lot of listening to me read aloud. I apologize. So this is something that this board does yearly. The process, just to outline it for people who may not be familiar. So in accordance with open meeting law requirements, the reviews that each individual board member completed was sent to our Director of Human Resources and also to Justin Dobson. And he put together this compilation of everybody's responses. As the chair, we established that I was able to see the report prior to the meeting this evening. We confirmed that with council, which was wonderful because in the past, you'd get it 15 minutes before the meeting and not be able to prepare anything, to say. So the rest of the board received it 15 minutes before the meeting. Obviously, we've been pretty busy. We recorded a show before this, so you probably haven't had too much of an opportunity to take a look. So we worked with, Mr. Sammy and I worked with Christina Ordung, who is our HR director, on sort of revising the evaluation rating scale. So it's on a 1 through 4. 1 being needs improvement, 2 being meets, 3 being exceeds, 4 being outstanding. We also, at the request of Mr. Mizikar, did a modified 360 review and a staff survey. We had a very strong response rate to the staff survey, and Mr. Samia and I interviewed 6 staff members, and all of that information that we gleaned from those interviews was shared with Christina Ordung, and then through her meeting with individual board members, everyone was brought up to speed on the results of those interviews. And then Mr. Mizikar completed his self-assessment of his FY24 goals. And that information, along with a self-reflection, was shared with the board. And we had some time to then go through and complete the evaluation. So I am going to go through this, and it's going to take a while. But, the work that Mr. Mizikar does, I think, is exemplary, and he definitely should hear, what the board has to say. And I think it's also of interest to the public to hear the way that the board perceives the work that is done. I think the first thing to recognize, and that also Mr. Mizikar was very clear about stating in his self-reflection, is that he can't take credit alone for progress made on goals, because a lot of the work that's done is the work of his team. But again, what we all recognized is that he has set the tone for the team to be able to work autonomously and achieve those goals. And so that is a credit to the, just to the culture that's been created. So section 1 was goals. Goal number 1 was to implement a communications plan and develop programs and practices that enhance internal and external awareness of services, activities, and accomplishments of the organization. And it was an exceeds standard. And I'm just going to read a bit that board members had commented in the narrative. Kevin has led on increasing communications with all stakeholders and community members to make sure the most up-to-date information is available by empowering the town manager's office and his staff. With the town manager podcast, the digital newsletters to residents and town meeting members, the quarterly print newsletter mailed to each household, and the continued use of the town's social media have been useful tools in disseminating information. Mr. Mizikar is a true visionary and has steadily transformed the culture of town hall and town operations to improve the resident experience. The adoption of the 2030 strategic plan by the Select Board in January 2023 provided Mr. Mizikar with the stakeholder input needed to improve and grow the organization. Kevin has addressed each of the specific FY24 goals. Some were completed, some are in progress, and some were later deemed non-applicable, but all of them were addressed and nothing fell through the cracks. I look at this in the context of his entire body of work and the collective performance of all municipal operations in Shrewsbury. Staffing is lean, demands are high, and budgets are lower than ideal. He is outstanding at identifying and developing talent and creating opportunities so that Shrewsbury is an employer of choice. Goal number 2 was to leverage and consolidate technology and business processes and systems to increase resident customer self-service convenience and transparency. And he fell between exceeds and outstanding. With respect to technology, the newly created business systems analyst position has played a significant role in ensuring that teams, departments, and residents maximize the use of software tools to drive productivity and efficiency. The use of OpenGov has provided much flexibility, accessibility, and transparency, and the increased utilization of this tool has been of great benefit to the residents and the staff. The switch to City Hall systems for billing has been good, and the data received so far is encouraging. As we continue to use these tools, more education to residents will be needed in order to increase the usage of the tool to ensure residents are comfortable and proficient, and while also enabling the town to save money on mailing bills. Goal 3 was to enhance program services and physical infrastructure to increase the health and well-being of residents. And on that, he was between meets and exceeds. A couple of comments. It should be noted that the evolution of our Parks and Rec department is amazing and has significantly increased and expanded options and opportunities for our community. While Kevin will say this is not his doing, it is one of the many examples where his leadership has positive impact. American Rescue Plan Act funds have provided opportunities to make investments that the operating budget would not allow in many of the strategic outcome areas. Changing regulations meant the need to pivot in our plan, making sure that no money would be left unspent. Mr. Mizikar is nimble when it comes to making unexpected changes. He and his staff work quickly to understand the changes and put together a new proposal for the board, allocating remaining dollars in ways that benefit the entire community and free up dollars in future operating and capital budgets. Kevin and his staff have worked hard to provide as much assistance as possible to migrant families sheltered in the community, demonstrating the town manager's office's ability to adapt and respond with care and determination to helping those in need. And then section 2 was technical competencies. One second. So I'm going to read from the report the categories. Just a second. Okay, so category 1 was professional integrity, and he was rated an outstanding. Category 2 was community engagement. The rating there was exceeds standard. Category 3 was equity and inclusion. The score was between meets and exceeds. Category 4 was staff effectiveness, and he was between exceeds and outstanding. Category 5 was personal resiliency and development, and he fell between exceeds standard and outstanding. Category 6 was strategic leadership, an average score between exceed standard and outstanding. Strategic planning, average score between exceeds and outstanding. Policy facilitation and implementation, between exceeds and outstanding. Community and resident service, received an exceed standard. Delivery of service, received an exceed standard. And for technological literacy, an exceeds again. And for financial management and budgeting, a score of outstanding. For human resources management and workforce engagement, between exceed standard and outstanding. For communication and information sharing between exceeds standard and outstanding. And I have just a few comments to share from the narrative that board members provided. Kevin continually encourages his staff to be better personally and professionally. I have seen Kevin empower his staff to be their own leaders, which is translated into improved service quality for residents and staff. Encouraging collaboration across the organization has allowed leaders to emerge. Kevin has built an excellent support ecosystem throughout the town hall. Through the development of the select board priority areas as well as the town manager's own goals, Kevin was instrumental in providing honest feedback on how to be most effective in achieving these goals. The use and enhancements of OpenGov data collection has allowed Kevin and his team to become aware of progress in several goals. The information that accompanies all of the agenda items for select board meetings is critical and much appreciated. This information helps guide the discussion and decision-making process. During disagreements, Kevin is a fair voice who is able to deliver the information without coloring it with bias. During policy discussions and workshops, Kevin understands when to listen to feedback and when to speak up and offer his perspective. Kevin is clear in communicating his goals and is able to have tough conversations when needed. All of this helps strengthen the organization as each department has a clear understanding of the overall goals. Kevin is constantly in touch with members of his staff and the select board to make sure everyone is up to date. Kevin's calm demeanor allows for information to be shared with him easily as well. The value of having a competent, capable, trustworthy manager should not be taken for granted. Residents and business owners should be aware of how important it is that Mr. Mizikar chose to work in Shrewsbury 7 years ago and continues to choose Shrewsbury each day. Like in private business, the person at the top of an organization matters. Their success is dependent upon their ability to build a culture of support and collaboration, get buy-in from all on the collective vision and strategy to achieve that vision, build relationships both within and outside the organization, and support all employees in reaching their full potential. Kevin is consistently focused on the needs of the residents. He's an advocate of community involvement and engagement, which has led to increased communication and outreach by the town. There is still a lot of work to be done, but he would be the first to acknowledge that. Kevin is invested in developing and enabling talent. It was evident during the Finance Committee budget hearings that each department lead has a deep understanding of and ownership of their respective operations. He effectively empowers his team, enabling them to achieve positive outcomes for Shrewsbury. His leadership style acknowledges the importance of teamwork in accomplishing the town's objectives. And just a few more. Mr. Mizikar has served the town of Shrewsbury exceptionally well in fiscal year '24. During the 360 review process, he was recognized as an effective leader who supports growth and is committed to excellence. He is a motivator, a collaborator who truly cares about his team and aspires for all within Town Hall and all residents in the town of Shrewsbury to thrive. Mr. Mizikar is committed to high standards, holds himself and those throughout the organization accountable, and is focused on continuous enhancement of a positive work culture, which continues to result in outstanding outcomes throughout the organization. He's a champion of empowering his team and his team's development. Employees throughout the organization continue to expand their knowledge base, skill set, and confidence, particularly in the town manager's office. And as a result, the town of Shrewsbury benefits from a highly functioning town staff that is able to meet and exceed our residents' expectations. Kevin demonstrates exemplary leadership qualities as evidenced by the highly positive feedback from his staff evaluations. It is particularly noteworthy that he surpassed the exceed standard rating in an anonymous feedback setting. This speaks highly about his effectiveness in fostering a team-oriented culture that prioritizes continuous improvement. His professionalism, coupled with his approachability and accessibility, drives his team's ability to excel. Kevin's leadership style empowers his team to leverage their strengths and perform at their best, further demonstrating his commitment to both individual and team performance. And I do think that I could continue on quite a bit, but the overall evaluation was a score of 3.4, which is between exceeds standard and outstanding. And I will say, just from my own personal perspective, that how amazing it is to work with you. And I hope that the residents understand just how important it is to have you in this leadership role in the organization and the absolute transformation that I've witnessed. I mean, I joined the board when you were hired, and so I've seen it from the beginning, and I don't notice it all the time in the day-to-day, but when I step back to write my evaluation, I'm always blown away by the vision and how you're methodically just taking steps toward that vision. And the one thing I say about you every year is you're consistent, right? It's the same Kevin every day. It doesn't matter what's blowing up in town hall or at your house. Like, it's the same calm person every single day. And I think that that is what sets the tone for the whole organization to feel like this is a place where they want to come to work every day. And I know Mr. Sammy and we heard that over and over again when we did the staff interviews. It was just this positive, we want to work harder because Kevin makes us want to work harder. And that's something special, to cultivate that sort of a climate in town hall. So I will stop there and see if there are any other comments that board members would like to add. Go ahead, Mr. Samuel.
Just two, you've done a nice job summarizing. Two areas I think very important, and we talked about this a year ago, the strategic plan. And before the pandemic, that's something, Kevin, you had championed, and you lay the groundwork in place, and then just a small thing called the COVID-19, and had to pivot and deal with all of those challenges. But got it back on track in January of last year, approved the strategic plan. The most important part of a strategic plan is actually executing on it, and you started from the beginning with the fiscal '24 budget and aligning our priorities together with the budget, what drove the budget, what's driven the fiscal '25 budget, and that's been so instrumental. And with department heads and individual stakeholders aligning their goals together with the strategic plan and rowing in the same direction, it's going to continue to maximize efficiencies and make sure that the plan is quick and nimble that it needs to be, but also be resident-centric, which has been the whole design of the plan when you engage with the community. And that's what we heard way back when with Olathe, Kansas, that you want all stakeholders to buy into that, to be part of that fabric. And that is what we see not only in the organization, but in the community. And continuous focus to do or improve. There's no stagnancy or complacency. And working on communication, there's been tremendous improvements there. People are very busy. It's hard to get to everybody, but we're doing what we can to do it. And town meeting member enhanced communication. And it was good before, but we're not accepting good. We're looking for great, where all can thrive. So that's one area that's been really important that I want to focus on, because Shrewsbury is going to be next to Olathe, Kansas. It's that gold standard, and that's important. The other piece, too, and we talked about it with the school department, is financial management. We hear about other communities, great communities that have been conservative and have done a nice job budgeting, and this year they've hit the wall. Why? Because looking at stimulus funding or putting in recurring expenses, and then that's not there anymore, where we've had this incremental plan, whether it's the stabilization fund or utilizing very small aspects of ARPA only to partially fund, understanding that those small amounts of recurring expenses would be fully funded the next year as part of the appropriated budget. So that would be a strategic way to get there, but over a 2-year period. The override's lasting for 6 years. That's not by accident. That starts with leadership and accountability. And it's your relationship as well with Dr. Sawyer in the school department that is the best it's been that I've ever seen it. And it continues to grow, and you have issues in terms of you keep each other informed, and that keeps the town informed as well. So those are 2 points I wanted to highlight. I think, Beth, you did a great job doing it. But the financial model that you've put in place has already been tried and true during a pandemic. You were able to pivot and go through an area hopefully none of us ever have to experience again. But we did it because of that model and your strength with financials. And that is what we're seeing, and now that ripples through together with the strategic plan, and that will be something that Shrewsbury will follow for decades to come. I mean, so good job, great year. The organization, you still have your expectations higher, and they're meeting them. And the last thing I want to say is it was really neat to hear from the organization, different positions, and everyone said the same thing in the descriptions: empowerment, motivator, calm. And it was consistent in totally different levels within the organization and positions and functions, but it was consistent. And that's, Beth, as you said, it's the same Kevin you get every day, irrespective of the challenges. He gets it done and done well. So great year. Look forward to even next year doing even better. And I know you will. So nice job.
Thank
Anyone else?
I just have some comments. When I met with the Human Resources Director to go over the results of the Town Manager 360 evaluation, one of the questions that I had for her was who initiated that process, that evaluation process where, department heads that work under you are evaluating you. And she told me that it was actually Mr. Mizakar's initiative to bring this evaluation piece to the town. And she also told me that many towns do not use this review system because when it has been used in the past, oftentimes the results are not positive in regards to the town manager. And despite this, Mr. Mizikar initiated this process and moved forward with it, which is really exemplary of his commitment to continued improvement and professionalism within the town. And it is notable that the feedback received from the town was overwhelmingly positive from our departments. As Mr. Samian noted, the financial aspects of your job, you have absolutely exemplary service. We are in excellent financial standing. You have very forward-thinking financial planning with thoughtful prioritization of projects, sensible use of free cash, strategic use of debt, and this has allowed our town to, again, maintain our AAA bond rating issued by Standard & Poor's, which maximizes resident tax dollars. The dynamic forecasting model that your team developed has allowed us to analyze future needs and establish a way to determine the financial impacts of future capital needs and operating needs on the taxpayer. And your excellent stewardship of the town's financial resources has allowed us to extend the commitments made to the community with the passage of the 2021 operational override, while maintaining excellent municipal services, making infrastructure improvements, and building financial resiliency. And, just another piece that came out of that 360 evaluation was your the attitude you bring to the community, to your staff, to residents. You approach everybody with you're humble, you are empathetic, and you treat everybody with dignity and respect. One of the comments in the report was that you treat people, they are people first, and employees second. And I think that's really important that, every interaction you have is really about growth and improvement and supporting people and empowering them to meet their fullest potential in order to serve our residents in the best way possible. So I think I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, God.
Thank you, Kevin, for all of your work. It's been great getting the opportunity to work closely with you, especially being the new guy, and I have so many questions, but I really appreciate all of the information sharing and just collaborating with you up close. I know that one of the areas that's really important to me that we've talked about is community engagement, and just in this year alone, I'm very thankful for all of the progress that's been made in that area. I think that you and the staff have done a great job in making sure that information is getting directly to the residents through the podcast, Ask the Manager, direct mail newsletters, you name it. And I certainly thank Taylor too for her work, but all of that comes from the top. And as exemplified in the 360 review from the department heads, you've helped foster a culture at Town Hall that is very open and helpful to residents when they come in with their questions and their concerns. And that's something that I'm certainly very appreciative of, because I know that you and staff often will sit down one-on-one with folks. And I don't think that many organizations across the Commonwealth can say the same thing. So really am thankful for that. I know that community engagement is something that we have made a lot of progress in, and we need to continue making progress in to make sure that those who typically aren't engaged with the local government are still getting the information that they need. So I look forward to continue to strategize with you and to hear your thoughts on how we can better reach out to folks in the community. But overall, just thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose I have to say something. No, I think I say this every year. You know, my career is in the private sector, and I find this so awkward. And I'm more of a, you know, sort of praise publicly, criticize privately. But I think it's important to note that your job, you know, we're giving you glowing feedback, and it's very deserved. I think that on the daily, you look at the other 364 days of the year, you have 5 of us coming at you from different directions, sharing feedback, telling you what we're hearing in the community. Hey, could you do this? Could you do this better? Could you say this more clearly? Get out there. Like, and you're always very responsive. And I think that listening to the feedback and responding to it has, you know, certainly contributed to your success. But, you know, we shadow you a lot. We see how many meetings you're in. We see how early you're in, like meetings like this, whether it's finance committee, other committee meetings. You know, all of the technical aspects of running a town of our size, you know, things from the landfill to, you know, DPW and water main breaks. And, you know, it's like you're everywhere. The chief of police reports to you, the fire chief, like our public safety is all under your leadership. And you do an excellent job. And I think that you're most critical on yourself, which I think is why I want to sort of publicly say that, you know, your growth mindset and your commitment to continuous improvement is very appreciated. And I know it will only continue to grow. And I think that we're very fortunate for your professionalism and your leadership. And so I echo what everyone is saying. I think that there are always cynics out there who will look at this and say, well, it's easy to exceed goals when the goals are, you know, so low. Or, you know, oh, look at the select board falling all over the town manager. But, you know, I stand by all this. I think privately or publicly, I think this feedback is very warranted and very well deserved. And, you know, I'm hopeful it's going to continue in the future.
Thank you.
Sure. I certainly appreciate all the comments of the board. You know, I'm going to say this, but it's 100% true. Like the work of staff and their ability to really get things done and carry out the work on a day-to-day basis is truly exceptional. I mean, I think that is not present in other towns above all. So I'm really thankful for that. I feel like we have a ton of work to do, right? I want to be more publicly present and engaged and continue to enhance that community engagement. I'm really grateful for the board providing me with development opportunities. I wasn't at the last meeting. I was fortunate to be able to attend a professional development program for a week at the College of Charleston in South Carolina with peers of mine, which is really energizing and helpful in thinking about the work that we do. Sometimes we can get down in the grind. And that gets challenging, but everyone's really engaged. I have an amazing team across the board, especially within our own office. Just keeps every day light, keeps the motivation, picking each other up and building the organization. And everyone truly wants to be there, so it's fun to come into the office and work on these things. And it will be here long after, you know, we leave our positions, and we're here to leave it better than we found it. So that's what we work on every day. So I appreciate the feedback. It's super meaningful to me. We see what's happening out there in the public, and we're always trying to improve. And we appreciate the opportunity when people actually do engage with us. So it's not only about us sitting down with people, it's people being willing to sit down with us and actually learn the facts and understand our perspective, and then work to provide the best outcome for the community. And I look forward to keep doing that.
Great, thank you. All right, so we will continue on, because back to work. Item number 14 is to review an act to lay out Puritan Street based on the layout plan and sign the report. So again, this is just the next step in the process as we continue to get Puritan Street ready for acceptance. Make it a cul-de-sac.
Yes, so the motion is to move the vote to lay out Puritan Street based on the layout plan and sign the report, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 15
Madam
is.
Chair,
Oh,
just a quick question. On 13, do we need to approve his? Mr.
Oh, you're absolutely right. We need to vote on it. So we need to, thank you so much for pointing that out. So let's just go back to item 13, and we need to vote to accept, I guess, the manager's performance evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 15 is to review and act on the 2024 garage license renewals. And there is a list attached to your agenda. This is something that we do yearly. This is basically, so this is different from what we do in December because we are right now just approving these garages' ability to continue repairing vehicles.
So I'll move approval based on the list attached to the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And item number 16 is to review and act on the 2024 Dealer of Precious Metals license renewal.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I just want to thank you, Justin, for all the work that you do to make sure that everyone's paperwork is in order so that we can do these pretty easily. Item number 17 is to review and act to authorize the town manager to sign the Public Educational and Government PEG Access Programming and Services Agreement with Shrewsbury Media Connection, which is SMC. So this is the board's authorization for the town manager to sign this agreement, which outlines the services that are to be provided by Shrewsbury Media Connection concerning broadcasting meetings of public bodies and the production and operation of PEG channel programming. So the current agreement expired in December 2023, and this agreement will be in effect from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st of 2028. And most changes are basically minor, and, things like changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board, which, like I said, minor changes.
So move to authorize the town manager to sign the PEG Access Programming and Services Agreement with Shrewsbury Media Connection.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number,
Can I just make one
Yep.
quick comment?
Yep.
Just Shrewsbury Media Connection and Mark Sarah, who's here, just wanted to mention how fortunate we are to have the coverage of all of our meetings, and Liz Poplowski as well, and everyone at Shrewsbury Media Connection. They'll tape our select board roundtables. They'll be available for people to have their shows at their convenience, at the citizens' convenience, and to have all of our meetings covered live. We're truly fortunate that people can watch from the comfort of their home on YouTube afterwards the next morning, and we're just so fortunate to have that. I don't think every community does at all hours. Mark knows more about our town, I think, than all of us. But I just wanted to call out how hard they work for all of us, and it's part of informing residents as well that all of our meetings are recorded. They can be watched at their leisure, whatever time that is, and they can see what's going on. It's just another opportunity of communication, but it's there. And anything that we talk about is there at any time at their fingertips. So I just wanted to comment that, didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to.
that's really important.
How good of a job that they do for us, so just want to
No,
say.
that's very important. Mark's a great partner, and Liz as well.
I wanted to, if I may,
Sure.
just wanted to note they included in our packet on this was the year in review for Shrewsbury Media Connection, and they had the programming highlights and just the sheer number of programs that they produce and record and provide to our community. It's so important. I have a young family. I have 3 little kids that, were too young to be home alone. And so having meetings in the evening, I'm very lucky, and my husband's able to be home with the kids, or I can get a babysitter when I need to, and very lucky to be able to do this. But what Shrewsbury Media Connection enables for me is that I can follow all of the meetings that I'm not able to attend in person. So when there's a finance committee meeting that's 8 hours long on a Saturday, or, you know, something like that, when I'm not able to be present for meetings, I'm able to listen, you know, either live at home, or I can, you know, sometimes if you ever see me at the grocery store, I have headphones in, and I have on my phone, I have a meeting going while I'm grocery shopping or something like that. And, you know, engaging in your local government is so incredibly important, and Shrewsbury Media Connection really makes that available to everybody. So I'm just very grateful for the work that they do.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on to item number 18, which is to review and act on the 2024 affordable housing rent increase request for Audubon Shrewsbury. These are things that we do yearly. I know that sometimes there's questions about this. So we have to review the affordable housing rent increase, and these are annual increases that require a certified vote from the select board and approval by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Each property that has units with an affordability restriction submits a request before increasing the rent on these units. And these are formula-based decisions, and as such, the requested adjustments are recommended. And I did ask that Justin kind of share with me what the formula is. So the affordable housing formula is, according to HUD FY 2024, the annual income limit at 80% of the area median income. So the developer utilizes Shrewsbury Housing Authority's monthly utility allowance, which is updated annually, and the maximum rent and utilities should be no more than 30% of one's monthly income, and that the Audubon rent calculations rely on 70% of AMI, and Quinn 35 utilizes 80% of AMI. So there is a formula behind this, and it is a little bit more complicated than I would want to explain, just without a chalkboard or whiteboard or some sort of ability to share with people. But it isn't just a number that's kind of pulled out of the air. And just want to make sure that the public was aware of that before we reviewed and acted, because it kind of seems like, oh, we just do this because we have to, but there is rationale behind it.
Motion to approve the 2024 affordable housing rent increase request for Audubon Shrewsbury.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And item number 19 is to review and act on the 2024 affordable housing rent increase request for Quinn 35.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to correspondence. So email, item 20 is an email dated April 4th, 2024, from Rachel Missel, 23 Cypress Avenue, regarding wetland alteration and construction at 1 Greenbrier Drive and 169R Gulf Street development site. And this was concern over work being done that was compromising the wetlands when there was no authorization for work to be done. And I know that a stop work order was issued, and I see Mr. Baldinger nodding at me, which makes me think that work has stopped. Okay. Item number 21 is an email dated April 5th, 2024, from Krista Dupre, 14 Candlewood Way, regarding 142 Clinton Street, truck parking on streets. Item number 22 is an email dated April 4th, 2024, from Thomas Grisso, 4 Candlewood Way, regarding concerns about 142 Clinton Street project. So just on both of those two emails, one, we were CC'd on it, and the other was a forward, so it was like more like we want the board to know that I've sent this email. So what I did was I coordinated with Justin, and I just said, in this event, could you please let the planning department know that I'm expecting that staff is going to reply to these, and when those responses are completed, they'll be uploaded so that board members can see what the response was. In many cases, they're very technical questions that are not something that I would have ready answers to, and I would rely on town staff anyway. So might as well just streamline the process. Item number 23 is an email dated April 11th, 2024, from State Representative Hannah Kane regarding the FY25 House Ways and Means budget release. And I do want to thank Rep. Kane for her email and for the update and for her continued advocacy for Shrewsbury And item number 24 is an email dated April 19th, 2024 from Keith Elms, our Animal Control Officer. And it was his quarterly return on the annual warrant for the period of January 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2024. And we thank him for all of his work in the community and also for the report. And that is all I have for this evening. If there's nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Good night.